I now give the floor to Action Canada for Population and Development.
Thank you, Madam President. The Sexual Rights Initiative and Rutgers WPF welcomes the responses of the Netherlands to the recommendations made by states during the review session. We echo the need to include both sexuality and sexual diversity in the attainment targets for schools and are looking forward to comprehensive sexuality education taking place in all schools. The commitments to ratify the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities and to sign its optional protocol are important steps to strengthen the rights of persons with disabilities, and specifically their sexual and reproductive rights, which are stipulated in Article 25 of the Convention. Although the Netherlands has an obligation to protect people with disabilities from sexual violence, the sexuality of people with a disability is still neglected. International research finds that lack of sexual knowledge, dependency on others for daily care, lack of privacy, social isolation, physical and mental vulnerability, and low self-esteem are risk factors for sexual abuse. A recent Dutch study confirmed that and found that 61% of women and 23% of men with intellectual disability have experienced sexual violence. The research concluded that sexuality education and empowerment are crucial to enhance knowledge about sexual behavior and to increase self-esteem. The Netherlands has an obligation to protect people with disabilities from sexual violence and should ensure accessibility of comprehensive sexuality education. It should put in place effective policies on sexuality to prevent sexual abuse within all organizations working with persons with a disability and ensure that staff working with people with disabilities are trained to recognize symptoms of sexual abuse. SRI and Rutgers WPF believe that to give full effect to its commitments, the Netherlands should make a long-term strategic investment plan to address the issues of sexual and reproductive health and rights of people with a disability. I thank you for your attention.
National.
Thank you, Madam President. Amnesty International notes the Netherlands' positive engagement with the UPR process and commends it for including information on its overseas territories in the national report. Madam President, we urge the government to promptly implement the recommendations to develop a national human rights action plan. Long overdue, such an action plan would, we believe, enhance the protection and promotion of human rights in the Netherlands, for example, by clarifying the distribution of human rights competencies across the various parts of the kingdom and between ministries and other parts of the government. We also call on the government to implement recommendations to reduce immigration detention and to improve conditions in migration detention centres. In August this year, the Dutch National Ombudsman issued a report criticizing conditions in immigration detention centres for being disproportionately restrictive and similar to the conditions in which convicted criminals are held. While the government has taken a modest step in the right direction by piloting alternatives to immigration detention, it falls short in ensuring that detention is used only as a measure of last resort and that conditions in immigration detention centres comply fully with international human rights law and standards. Finally, Madam President, a large number of recommendations were made on the issue of discrimination, including against women, ethnic and religious minorities and migrants. We are concerned that the government has not always met the obligation to respect, protect and fulfil the right to non-discrimination. We urge the government to be more proactive in addressing the root causes of discrimination in the Netherlands and to promote greater tolerance and understanding. Thank you, Madam President.
I'd first of all like to give the floor to ANC Netherlands.
Thank you, Madam President. The Netherlands has come a long way in improving human rights of lesbian, gay, bisexual and transgender people. We commend the government on recent decisions to make comprehensive sexuality education compulsory and to simplify legal sex reassignment procedure, abolishing the sterilization requirement for transgender people. However, legal gaps as well as social challenges towards achieving full equality of LGBT people require more and continuous attention by the Dutch government. We recommend the Dutch government to include sexual orientation and gender identity and gender expression as an explicit ground for non-discrimination in Article 1 of the Dutch Constitution. And we also recommend to include gender identity and gender expression as an explicit ground for non-discrimination in the existing general law on equal treatment. The situation regarding healthcare for transgender people in the Netherlands is troublesome. Many experience discrimination and non-recognition in healthcare. Additionally, long waiting lists limiting access to specific transgender healthcare have a negative impact on their well-being. We encourage that more research is done and attention be provided for the health needs of transgender people. The present Dutch equal treatment law provides religious schools the right to refuse or expel homosexual teachers and students that are open about their sexual orientation. The Council of Europe called for the abolishment of the paragraph stating that a publicly financed education system should be accessible by anyone without discrimination. We recommend that the government repeal provisions allowing expulsion or dismissal of students and staff for reasons related to their sexual orientation. Moreover, the human rights situation of LGBT asylum seekers and refugees remains problematic. While Dutch government has always shown a deep commitment to non-discrimination, asylum officials are still often relying on stereotypes. There are cases of LGBT asylum seekers being denied asylum under the assumption that they can and should conceal their identities to avoid persecution in their countries of origin. We call on Dutch government to provide safe shelter for LGBT asylum seekers.
Jurists.
Thank you, Madam President. The International Commission of Jurists and the Dutch section of the International Commission of Jurists, the NJCM, commend the Dutch government for engaging with the second cycle of the UPR in a constructive way. The NJCM nevertheless expresses disappointment that, although the government undertook consultations on the UPR process, it has not consulted with civil society on the substance of the UPR and has not been transparent about its intentions regarding positions to be taken on the recommendations of the UPR working group during the session today. The Dutch section of the ICJ sincerely hopes that the government will honour the commitment made during the working group in May concerning engagement with civil society in the follow-up to and implementation of accepted UPR recommendations. The NJCM regrets that the government has not accepted the recommendations to include human rights education in the civic education program, especially since many human rights institutions have supported the formal inclusion of human rights in educational programs in the Netherlands. The Education Council a few weeks ago indicated that civic education program in the Netherlands remains a vague and indeterminate element of Dutch education. The Council strongly recommended to give human rights a prominent place in civic education. We therefore sincerely hope that the government will reconsider its position on this matter. I thank you.